Hallo almal, ons is weer terug. Dis Karen die Komponis en ons gesels weer met Phillip. Onthou verlede week het ek gesê, daar was so baie dinge waaroor ons wou praat en toe kom ek nie by die helfte uit nie, dat ons hierdie gesprek moes verleng en dit is wat ons nou doen vanmiddag. So, ek gaan nou weer oorskakel na Engels toe, want in die week wat verby is kon Lance nog nie die taal bemagtig nie. So, hier gaan ons nou in Engels. Lance, welcome.
Thank you very much,
For a
Karen.
second time.
Lovely to be here again.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you. Now, before we continue, I first want to ask what this is for.
That shark was given to me by my fiance a few years ago, and that's my composing buddy. So
And does it help?
I think so. Well, he certainly scares me. So into that. Maybe it's the reason that some of my themes sound a bit like the Jaws theme.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, that's very interesting.
But
it must have a different connotation also, because why would it be a shark? There must be a reason.
Well, for some reason, I just had this obsession with shark movies, like the
really?
Jaws and that. So she just decided to.
Oh, I thought it might be something to do with you coming from KwaZulu-Natal and there being a
proper
beach,
rugby team,
supporting a good rugby team, having a lot of sharks in the ocean around there.
Yeah, the winning team,
Yeah, okay. So all of that links. Everything is always linked.
Definitely.
Anyhow, so it's good to have you back. So I can take off where I ended last time.
Sure.
And you know, after our conversation last week, when I went home, it came to me that I realized that when we spoke about music, you always bring it in relation to vocal music first. You relate to vocal music. When I spoke of music, I didn't mean that. But when I thought about it later, I realized, but you did.
Yeah.
You think in terms of vocal music. And why is that? Does that have to do with the years in New York, or why?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It does have to do with that. So I'm a choir conductor,
right,
and a singer. So I naturally tend to think in terms of vocal music. But interestingly, contrary to that, most of the music I've written is actually instrumental music. So it really has nothing to do with that. And when I started composing, I purposely tried to get away from the vocal thing. So I didn't even write for wind instruments. I wrote for piano and strings. So I wouldn't be, say, limited by short breaths or anything like that, because obviously violins, you can just change the bow and breathe whenever you want to.
Breathe whenever you want to.
Pianists don't have to breathe, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with the music.
Just talking about that, sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. I was watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Jeremy Clarkson. And one of the questions was, in what section of the orchestra would you find a flute player? And the lady didn't know that and was very, how can she not know that? But then in the end, Jeremy Clarkson said he could never understand how anyone can play the flute. How can you play an instrument where you cannot breathe in? So he thinks you only breathe out all the time when you play a flute. But I mean, you have to breathe in as well, no? Otherwise, you'll never be able to play and breathe out.
Absolutely.
So there is, it's so apparent how there is a misunderstanding in the general public about these instruments that we write music for.
Yeah.
And I must say, I never expected your answer now when you said you think in terms of vocal music first, because you are a choir conductor and a singer, first of all. Yeah. But your music that you write are primarily not for vocals. It's for instrumentals. And I cannot believe the reason is just because you can breathe anywhere. Why is that? How did that come about?
Yeah. Well, that was that was almost a conscious choice I made.
Really?
When I was an undergrad, when I started writing, when I started composing, I hardly wrote any choir music at all, actually, for a long time.
Yes.
And I did purposely want to develop my sense of harmony, because I think that was my weak point, maybe.
And where would that come from? Is that all the modal music you sang in New York?
Yeah.
You think it was that?
Definitely.
Influence?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Right. That's very interesting.
Yeah, but to understand the different types of harmony. So either harmony in the abstract, in the French style. So when you write music for color, that comes out of the standard harmonic progressions, and then you build on that and deviate from the standard tonal system. And then the other style, which would be, I guess, the more German style, which would be the harmony that arises from counterpoint.
Okay.
And then you make it more chromatic. And then at some point you stop thinking in the, you start, integrating those two styles. And I think that's what I like doing now. And then I returned to vocal music strangely during COVID, really. And that's I had written one or two vocal pieces or choral pieces, but then I think 2019, somewhere around then, I wrote an organ piece, and after that I decided to write a choir piece. It was the first time in a long time. So I wrote
for 4 voices, male,
actually for treble voices, so boy soprano or girl sopranos, and organ.
Oh, beautiful.
And then after that I wrote a piece for 4 voices, a 4-part choir and organ, and then the latest one was a sort of double choir Latin mass, so that was sort of slightly larger scale thing. Yeah.
So you've actually spoken about things that I wanted to introduce more formally, because I want to speak about your compositions, as this is, we want to talk about composing this year. And what I really want to know is, it's so boring to say what inspired you to do that, but there is always a link. There's always something that brings you to the piano, and which gives you that inspiration to go and put your hands down and do something and listen to what you're doing, and then seeing, but can it work? Should I change it? Is this maybe better? And then you write it down, and then a few days later you scratch it out and you start again. So how does that purpose or that process, in your case, how does it work? And what gets you to that first stage of actually deciding, or not deciding, just feeling, well, I have to go do it now. Now's the right time. How does it come about?
I think it's difficult to actually pin down, but if I decide I want to write a certain piece, then I just go to the piano and start improvising. But often, again, being primarily a vocal musician or choral musician, it would come from the stuff that I do all the time. And in my case, that would be plain chant, Gregorian chant.
Really?
So a lot of my stuff is based on Gregorian, they call them, the formulas of Gregorian chant.
But do you still listen to that a lot?
Oh yeah, in fact at the cathedral we sing that every Sunday.
Yes.
The old plain chant. We sing the psalm to plain chant, and even quite a few of our hymns are based on plain chant, or even old English folk songs or something like that.
Right.
That's kind of our normal thing. So that's my first impetus. But the thing about 20th century or 21st century harmony and plain chant is that you can expand those possibilities very, very quickly. So for example, the modal style is much more plastic, I would say. You can mold it, you can shape it very, very quickly according to all sorts of weird and wonderful harmonies. So I can even take an example.
Yes, please
at
do.
The piano. So if you, I'm just making this up now. So if you had a piece of plain chant like the, so you could something like that, or
right,
or whatever it is.
Yes.
So you can't do that with tonal music, because tonal music has very, very specific rules.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously one of the great styles of Western music.
Yes.
But it is very specific.
Yes.
Very specific. It's either major or minor.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So that's one of the things.
So there are two things that I want to ask now. I hope I remember them. The first thing is, which modal progression, not progression, toonleer?
Oh yeah. Well, which mode?
Which mode? Just mode. You say in English. Just which mode? Okay. So which mode do you prefer singing in?
It
is
depends.
It not so specific?
It depends on the piece. But I would say for me, for composing, and the ones I think in most naturally would be the Mixolydian. So
that's the fifth one.
Yeah, so that would be G to G on the white keys, to put it crudely. So instead of this tonal, and then you can get things if you use that combination of notes. Then instead of, so that's a typical tonal progression, 1-5-1. But if you did that in with an F natural, you could do some. There you're breaking all the rules of tonality. You've got parallel fifths.
Yes.
So it gives you that almost medieval ring, but at the same time you've got major triads.
Right.
Parallelisms, and that's much more ancient than tonal music, of course. Yeah.
But the rules. I mean, we know about the rules, but aren't we supposed to break them? I mean, if I write music, I write what I like, what's working for me, that I want to hear in my ears.
Yeah.
Then if they say I am not allowed to use fifths and it works for what I'm doing, then why should I not use the fifths?
Oh yeah. I mean, then you're just working in a different style. That's it. Like Debussy uses parallel sevenths. I mean,
right, and it's beautiful.
Nothing wrong with it. And of course, music is very context based. That's the thing. So this, if you ask people, is that a consonance or dissonance? Does it need to be resolved? Most people would say yes, but surely if you do that, with the same notes, dissonance. But what about? It's fine.
Exactly.
If you're writing in a jazz style, you can end it like that.
Exactly.
And there are two so-called dissonances, but they don't have to be resolved, so they're not dissonances. It depends on the style.
It depends on the style.
Yeah.
What you are busy with, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And I remember once we were talking about composition, and you said to me, you cannot remember when last you composed in a specific scale, because your work is just C major with a lot of flats and, wat noem je het in Engels?
Sharps, yeah.
No, not sharps or accidentals. It's everything is in C major with accidentals. Why do you compose like that? Or is it the reason what we've spoken about now? Is it your modal background?
I think so. And I think one of the things I have learned actually is that tonality, as wonderful as it is, and I think our greatest composers in the Western literature are tonal composers, or most of them. Bach, Handel, Mozart, everyone. But at the same time, the tonal system is actually quite unnatural to sing in, which is the reason most folk music is in pentatonic mode or whatever. It's limited in scope, and to sing tonal music properly is actually quite difficult. That Mixolydian is much more natural to sing in that.
Although on the ear, it's difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
It's difficult because we are so not used to hearing it any different.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
We are stuck in that which we actually studied at university.
Yes, yeah.
Now the background that we got in terms of what classical music is exactly majors and minors.
Precisely, yeah.
And that's kind of sad, no?
I think, I mean, there's so much to do. I mean, that's the reason that most of these places are called conservatories, because you're conserving a certain style.
Yes, I never thought about that.
It is designed to conserve the tonal style. That's basically what it is. I think at the end of the 19th century, when you get people like Brahms, for the first time in Western music, people started looking at old music very seriously again, not just as a resource.
How old?
Studying the music of Palestrina,
right,
of Heinrich Schütz, of Bach. So when you get the Bach revivals in the 19th century, such a thing was almost unheard of before that. Why would you study old music? You just write something new.
Yes.
Novelty was always the thing.
But it is as if in our minds we went through the period that we call classical music, and there was change all the time, and you can actually see how they well, we won't say finish off with a one and then move on, but it is as if, the Baroque period goes and goes, and then it kind of stops, and then it goes into classical period, as if they want to move on to something else.
Yeah.
And it's as if now that we've reached electronic music, we are grabbing back to that which was called classical music,
Yes.
but which we now realize, if you go back even further than Bach, in the Renaissance, etc., that was real music.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we have now is, I can't define it. I can't define it in terms of musical terminology that I have. I don't know how to define it.
Oh yeah, well, there's
What
so
we
much,
have now.
so much terminology. Well, I think now we have a sort of postmodern approach, which is we don't necessarily have that sense of that I guess that they had for a long time, which is that music, or all art, but especially music, becomes more extreme.
Yes.
So I think the way they thought of it sounds quite strange nowadays, but let's say you have Haydn, and then you complicate it more, make it more romantic or something.
Right.
You get Mozart, it's a silly way of
Yes.
saying it, but
Yes.
and then Beethoven. He takes Haydn's forms, sonata form, but he makes it more personal. He lengthens it. He makes everything louder, everything softer. The orchestra's bigger,
Yes.
so everything becomes more extreme. And then someone says, "Okay, now Beethoven," and then Brahms takes Beethoven, bigger
Right.
orchestra, and then you get Mahler.
Yes. Yes.
At the end of it, and by the time you get to Strauss and Mahler, you've got 20 offstage horns and things for special effects. But you're still really working in the tonal style.
Yes.
And then at some point, it all dissolves, and Schoenberg comes along and
Right.
says, "No, let's have a democratic approach to it." Einstein has the theory of relativity. Newton goes out the window.
Yes.
Instead of having a hierarchical tonal system, you have this democratic thing. But of course,
Right.
democratic music, that's atonality, is very
That's
difficult
it.
to swallow.
Yes.
And that will never be natural.
But is that where you feel comfortable?
I feel comfortable in appreciating it and in using it as exercises. And I still
Right.
do like some of, the greatest pieces by Schoenberg are fantastic. I do believe they're masterpieces, and I actually do enjoy listening to such things. But I think it's one expression. And then you get the French, Debussy, who was a contemporary of Schoenberg in a sense, didn't live as long. But they went a different way. They also dissolved tonality, but they went to a type of modality, where they combined the whole tone scale, which is also an unnatural scale, because it doesn't exist in folk music, with natural scales. So it was a very interesting two approaches, the French and the German style. The English had their own thing. They went to their own folk music, like Vaughan Williams, like Gustav Holst. But they started
Yes.
thinking differently to this kind of, everything must be in the same Germanic style.
Yeah.
All sorts of reasons for that, mostly political, the First World War, of course. And, but that's kind of the end of that whole era.
Right.
And I think actually we've almost been living in a kind of postmodern style since Schoenberg, strangely.
Yes.
Because the composers went their own way.
Yes.
There was no predicting it.
Yes, and it's as if each one really can do what he feels comfortable
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
Like you writing in C major with a lot of accidentals. How did you find yourself there? How did that come about? You don't just go and
I
sit
don't
down
know.
and you decide, okay, I'm going to write in C major, and if I want to put in a B flat, then I do it, and if I want to put in a D sharp, I do it, and I want to call it A sharp, I don't want to call it B flat, or indicate it as such in my music. How did you decide, or did it happen naturally?
I think I can't remember, to be honest, but the one thing I can say is I don't think I've ever sat down and thought I need to keep this piece in this key. I
Right.
hear something in my head and then go and find
Yes.
it on the keyboard. It's
I
A
do
flat, then it's A
exactly.
flat.
I do exactly the same. But
Yeah.
when you hear it in your head, don't you hear it in a specific scale?
No, not me. No.
But
No, I
doesn't it
don't.
fit in, whether be it modal or major or minor? Doesn't it fit in
It could.
initially?
The harmony. The melody could.
Yes,
But
the melody.
But the
When you
harmony.
hear the theme,
Yeah.
doesn't that fit in?
The motive might fit into a certain style, but on the other hand, I could go harmonically, which I often did with my earlier music, and I could say these two interesting chords. So things that don't. So you could even go.
And there it changes
like
immediately.
And you can change it immediately. It doesn't really have a system except you're planing the harmonies a little bit.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, you could have more chromatic. You eventually end up there or something like that. There's no real system for that.
And so when you realized this is what I want to do, did you then think, well, it's difficult for me to indicate a scale, right?
Oh yeah.
When you score it, so rather than just go without it.
Yes,
and indicate it as accidentals.
Yeah. I hardly use key signatures. Very, very rarely. I think maybe one piece, maybe. I don't really use accidentals.
Well, that's amazing. Imagine. That is really amazing. Yeah. But okay, we're running out of time again, and I don't want it to finish. So I want to ask you another thing, because we haven't even touched on the type of music that you write. You've spoken a little bit about your choral music that you write, but you say that it's not so much. So how much have you written, and what is it?
Yeah. Well, not much at all. I'm actually, strangely, I when I was an undergraduate, my major was composition. But when I started working, I really became a choral conductor, and I did my master's in choral conducting. So, but it was actually during COVID when I realized, well, I might not always have access to a choir. Fortunately, it only lasted a few years, but I did think that I should keep busy. And do something. So I decided to return to composition. And also in Bloemfontein, immediately after COVID, it was difficult to get choirs back together. It would take a while to get back to the standard, build it up again. So with composition, I decided that is something I can do on my own.
Yes.
Yeah, and I needed to keep fresh. So I really trying to reinvent myself as primarily a composer who conducts.
Well, that is
which
very
is
interesting.
A little bit like being in Hollywood and saying I'm an actor, but actually I'm a waiter. I do that until I get my big break. It's not quite like that, but it is more difficult being a composer because firstly it's solitary, and secondly there's no guarantee that things are going to get performed. But being a conductor, there's always a call for that. There's work. It's more public. It's relatively, I say easy, but if you can do it, it comes. You can prepare for something. You know what you're working to.
Yes.
Composition, you have to create it each time.
Yes, but I think if you don't create anything, what are you going to conduct? Always other people's work?
Yeah, always other people. Well, that's what I was saying. With Brahms, looking at old music. The first time people were conducting other people's music, which was a strange thing. But nowadays, that's go to a symphony concert. What do they play? Beethoven. You didn't write it, and in a way, your world is removed from Beethoven's world in most aspects. When Beethoven wrote the Third Symphony, it was such a new, electrifying, revolutionary thing, and people found it strange and dissonant and long and ridiculous.
Yes,
to be honest. Nowadays, it's a great classic.
Exactly.
So our relationship changes.
Yes.
So if we play something that was, Brahms or Bach or whatever, even Prokofiev, it's been softened by 100 years.
Yes.
We've had film music, we've had horror music.
Right.
We've had whatever.
But are there still people who go sit and write something in the style of Beethoven, for example, and then say, well, I want to perform it now? An orchestra piece, for example. Are there still such people? And I'm now not just talking about that which they write for movies, as you have just said.
But concert music.
But real concert music as we know it, as we perform all the time. When we play Haydn or we play Beethoven or Strauss or whatever the case might be, and we have got orchestra rehearsals and we perform when we give a concert.
Yeah.
Does that happen with music
Yeah.
that has been written now recently? Do you think that happens?
It's still quite rare, but there are people that do that. I would think the most famous example is she's a child prodigy called Alma Deutscher.
Right.
I think she's American of German ancestry,
Right.
but she writes music in the style of Mozart and Beethoven, and they perform it, with in Carnegie Hall and such.
So
there
orchestral
are people
music.
that orchestral works, but it's they are what most people would call style copies. So you're writing in the style of Beethoven.
Yes, but it shouldn't be a copy, because it cannot be a copy. It should. I don't like that word. Style copy, in the style of sounds better, but copy doesn't sound good to me. But all right, you are trying to write something in the style of the classical era.
Yeah.
And one immediately starts thinking, when you listen to it, is it good? You think by yourself, is it good? Well, what would make it good? Would it be better if it sounded more like Beethoven? Or do you want something that comes from the composer, from herself? Do we just want to write something that sounds like what it sounded like way back when?
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's difficult.
That's a double-edged sword. Yeah.
It's very difficult, because when a few pieces that I wrote actually really has very many classical aspects in it. You can identify.
Yes.
Really sounds like Beethoven.
Yeah.
And that little piece really sounds like Mozart. And here I've got something that's more atonal. So instead of calling it a copy, rather say it's something that fits into those years that they composed in that style. It's something similar to it. And we only can recognize it as such because we've heard it before.
Yes. Yeah, well, exactly. So I think the advantage to, let's say Alma Deutscher, so the advantage would be that the audience would recognize the style immediately.
Yes.
They would understand it.
Yes.
The disadvantage, of course, is that they say, oh, well, this sounds like Beethoven's whatever.
Yes.
And then they're going to compare it to Beethoven.
Right.
Nobody can write better Beethoven
And
than
they
Beethoven.
shouldn't. And they shouldn't.
So that's always the danger.
Yeah.
But having said that, the writing music or composing music is, yes, the inspiration might be, it's very personal, obviously, or whatever it was. But the act of taking your pen or sitting at the keyboard and writing something, that is a filtered artificial act. I mean artificial as in artwork. It has to be created. There are certain limits. For example, the lowest note on the flute. For example, you can't write below that, no matter what your heart tells you, or you want to hire an alto flute or whatever. But there are certain things, and then there are certain conventions, and then there's things like how much rehearsal time do you have. If you've got 2 rehearsals for this thing, you can't write a Schoenberg thing.
Yes.
Then you write something else in a more familiar style. So it's always a balance, and you're always writing within a tradition. And then the other thing, which I do believe, is the philosophical concept that once a composer writes something, and he gives it to the copyist or whatever, and then they give it to the orchestra, often if they get the composer to conduct it, you get the worst interpretation, because the composer is often the worst interpreter, because he wants to bring out that very clever bit of counterpoint that he worked on, whereas everyone else likes the tune. And he's in a minority opinion, so he starts to, his opinion is worth less than anyone in the audience. So it's that balance between classical and romantic, between formal and expression.
Yes.
And
I just see there are so many aspects to composition. That it is impossible to talk about all of them now.
Oh, yeah.
Because our time is up again. And I thought we would do all of this in one session. Imagine. We are not finished yet, Lance. Will we do another one?
Well, I'm not planning on moving from Bloem anytime
Yes,
soon.
because
so
we
around.
are stern Bloemfontein supporters and
Indeed.
inhabitants at this stage. So I'm going to say once more, thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
for
Carmen.
this
It was a
very
pleasure
interesting conversation that
Thank
we've
you.
had. And I think we're going to do it again.
again. My pleasure. Be my absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Baie dankie aan meneer Phillip. Wat ja, ek het nog nie dit gesê nie, maar hy is op pad om dokter Phillip te word. Maar nog nie daar nie, ons gaan daar kom. Daar's nog so baie wat ek wil sê, maar daar's nie nou tyd nie. So ek gaan nou vir eers tot ziens sê en dan gaan ek julle weer sien. En ons gaan weer met Lance Phillip gesels. So mooi bly totdat ek julle weer sien. Tata.